Hey everybody. Okay, so I'm Howard Tiersky. I'm the CEO of Moving Interactive. I'm here with Shaun Collins, who's our Director of Technology, and we're going to be going back and forth a little bit, talking about design reviews and hopefully some other interesting stuff. So yeah, basically we're going to start. We got a lot of stuff, so we're going to try to touch on each thing quickly and move on to the next, and then be available for a Q&A afterwards. Design reviews is going to be the first thing we'll talk about, and talk about how we collaborate with our clients and enable that. And then we have a number of other topics that Ken thought it would be interesting for us to talk about, how we use dashboards and how we use, it was interesting with some of the stuff this morning on the examples around meeting minutes. We'll show you how in the current tool set we're doing meeting minutes that have built-in tasks as well. Talk about some of the workflows that we use, how we control access to information with our clients, and how we use Bonfire for user acceptance testing. So first, very quickly, who's Moving Interactive? So we're an interactive agency. We call ourselves a digital product development company because clients tend to pull us in for end-to-end strategy through implementation. We get involved with a lot of clients who are working in the digital space and trying to figure out the business model that they should be following, what types of new products they should be bringing to market. A lot of our clients are media and entertainment companies, and of course the media industry is going through a lot of transformation right now due to everything from Kindles to Hulu and iTunes and all the other things that are changing the way that people receive and consume media. So we get involved at that early stage, and then we help typically through the creative design, requirements process, user research, the actual development, and in some cases we're involved as well, even in hosting and support. You see some logos of some of our clients. We've done most of the sites for Universal Studios theme parks around the Harry Potter launch. We do a lot of work for Reader's Digest, including readersdigest.com, etc. And you can see a few other kind of key facts about us. Oh, a little eye candy. We're about 50-50, maybe a little less, mobile apps and mobile websites, and kind of traditional web applications as well. So that's who we are in a nutshell, and our whole shop runs Agile, and we heavily use the Atlassian tools. So a little bit about how we use them at Moving Interactive. So first of all, we use them for pretty much everything we do. We use Jira, we use Confluence, we use Bonfire, we use team calendars, we use, probably there's maybe one or two that we don't use, but the vast majority. And we use them ourselves, and we also use them with our clients. And really, probably the key theme beyond the design review topic that we're going to talk about overall today is how it becomes a critical collaboration tool with our clients. Because clients like Reader's Digest or Constellation Energy, another client that we're doing a lot of work with right now, we have obviously people there who are stakeholders to the work that we're doing, technical people, business people, project management people, and one of the first things that we do in any project is we onboard them to Confluence and Jira. And then through the process, we use Jira and Greenhopper for doing our user stories and assigning development tasks, including to the client. And on any project, typically there are people at the client who have different tasks, even if those tasks are just review and approval tasks. Clients are participating in that with us. We do status reporting through Confluence, and you can see design reviews, UAT, and then we actually use Tempo quite heavily for the plugin for our time tracking and for our billing. And actually, one interesting side note that's happened for us is that we've actually started playing another role with our clients, which is very often, because they get onboarded to our tools, our Atlassian tools, and our process, we have a number of clients who said to us, after working with us on projects, have asked if we could help them in their transformation to become more agile and find the right tool set. And so we've actually now started working with a number of clients to help them implement Atlassian tools, Confluence, Jira, and very often we start them even on our own instances where they'll say to us, can we add 50 more developers to your instance so they can work within your workflows and using the issue types that we've created and the custom fields that we've created and things like that, because it works pretty well and it's already set up. And then we help them when the time comes to migrate to their own, to their own setups, whether that's through on-demand or a hosted solution. Okay, and a couple of quotes. I mean, at Reader's Digest, I'm not going to read this to you, but she's basically just saying how, and what I just talked about, which is that our processes then become something that they widely use for a lot of their work. And at Constellation, another client where this is a quote from the CIO about how we're helping them transform. So that's kind of a quick overview of us. In terms of what you're going to get out of today, I think we're in this mode where we're an agency working with clients. So a lot of the things we'll talk about are how we work with our clients. But I would guess that for those of you who are in that situation, obviously, that's highly applicable, I would hope. But for those of you who may not be, or maybe an internal function within a large company, for example, I would expect that you also have internal clients. You're working with business. If you're in IT, for example, you're working with marketing and other groups. And so a lot of the same principles that we're going to talk about, I would think and hope will apply. And we're going to try to be as kind of nitty-gritty with this stuff as possible, so we're going to show you some of the stuff we've done, and within the time constraints we have, try to get into it a little bit, roll up our sleeves, and show you like the specifics of how these things were implemented. Okay, so chapter 1 is design reviews. So what do we mean by design reviews? Well, the basic story that we were looking to fulfill for design reviews was that as a designer of a concept for a new mobile application or a website, we wanted to have a place where they could post those design concepts and let everybody review them and comment on them and have those comments be consolidated so that everyone could see them. And that stakeholders could then, when they were going and reviewing them, whether those were internal stakeholders, like our creative director, for example, or whether that was someone from the client externally, that they would be able to see all the other comments. And while that seems like a kind of basic objective, acceptance test, that it should be quick and easy, very important that you be able to comment on a specific spot in a design. So, I mean, I'll show you an example here, but that's a key part of it. Be able to circle something, underline something, point to a particular place, be able to see the history of the design revisions. And also be accessible, and I'll show you some of the solutions that we looked at. For one reason or another, we're not accessible to everybody. So this is the before picture. What we used to do is we would do our design work, and of course this is all in the phase prior to any actual development. This is just concept screens. We would do them in Photoshop typically, and they would be output as a PDF. So you might have a bunch of different screens in a PDF, and they would get routed around by email typically. And internally first and then with the client, and sometimes we might have a meeting and people would talk about it, but we would annotate them in this way. We would use typically Acrobat or Preview on the Mac, and you use the drawing tools, draw on it, point to things, put little comments off to the side. And many things about this work quite well. You certainly could clearly see what all the comments were. You couldn't necessarily see who the comments came from. Very often though, and very often as well, the thing might get emailed to 5 people and then we might get 5 annotated PDFs back. So now we've got to pull together information from 5 different annotated PDFs. And by the way, some of those comments might be contradictory. It might be someone said this, but their boss said that, and they don't have the benefit of seeing what each other is saying, so everyone might comment on the same thing because they all saw the same problem. And it was a lot of email traffic, and I mean, let's just face it, it was kind of old school. So we were looking to get to one place, one tool, one collaboration tool that everyone could see. So we said, okay, well, how can we do that? So we came up with a number of possible options, and then we basically piloted or tested them to see which one would work best for us. And I'm going to walk through all the options that we looked at because it may be that there's an option that we checked out, and I could tell you what we found, and it may not have been the one we chose, but actually it might be good for you if your requirements might be in some ways a little bit different from what ours were. So the first one we thought of was, well, maybe we could do the same thing with PDFs we're already doing. We like PDFs. Maybe we can just put them up in Confluence. Confluence handles PDFs, and we can annotate them there. That's one option we wanted to look at. A second was using the various drawing plugins that are available for Confluence, mainly Balsamiq and Glyphy. Maybe one of them would be good. You could kind of click on an image and use those tools to annotate. Maybe that would be a good option. Then that led us to think, well, Bonfire, Shaun's going to talk a little later about Bonfire, which we use extensively in our user acceptance testing process. It's designed for websites, but maybe there's somehow a way that we can use that in Confluence to do something similar with stuff before it gets to that stage where it's a clickable website. So we wanted to look at that. And then also we said, there are some annotation plugins available for Confluence, like Quick, which allow you to put post-it notes on a page. That's kind of what we want to do. Maybe one of those would fit the bill. So first of all, we looked at the PDFs. And on the next slide, there's a little rating. I think out of five hearts, that gets 1. It just doesn't work in Confluence for several reasons, for what we're trying to do. While Confluence has a great PDF viewer, the problem is that if you annotate, first of all, there's no annotation, right? You can preview the PDF in Confluence, but you're not going to see any annotations. And then secondly, even if you annotate it somewhere else, like let's say in Acrobat, when the viewer shows the PDF, the annotations don't appear. You need to be in Acrobat or in Preview. So that quickly killed that idea. In fact, even if you click on the annotation to open the full PDF, if you click on the PDF to open in the browser, even then, depending on the browser, very often the annotations only partially appear. Like in this case, you can see the circles and my little arrow, but you don't see what those little, dialogue box type, speech bubble things say. So really at this point, not practical. Although had that worked, had we had a way of embedding a PDF right in Confluence and annotating it, we would probably have been very excited about that. So maybe in the future. By the way, I know there's another plugin that was mentioned this morning that also does PDF viewing. Who's that from? AppFusions or somebody? Also does not do this. So check that out. Okay. So so the next thing we said was, well, Confluence has commenting, so maybe there's some way that we can use the commenting system within Confluence. But we really didn't even pilot that because we very quickly said, well, that fails one of our acceptance tests because there's no way for me to point to a specific spot on the design, and that was really something critical that we already had in our pre-existing approach that we couldn't lose. So, and you wind up with comments like our example here, in the second column, halfway down on the page, there's a green icon, forget it. You need to be able to draw an arrow, point to something, so commenting in Confluence was not an option. Personally, I thought this was the one that was going to work for us. If we could have just put little sticky notes on our images, that would have been probably a good solution, very similar to what we were already doing. So we checked out Quick, which is a great plugin and allows you to put these kinds of post-it notes on your page, good for annotating things. However, there's one big problem with Quick relative to our acceptance criteria here, which is that you can't put those post-it notes on top of an embedded image or PDF or anything like that, only on top of the text of your Confluence page. So if you're annotating, as in this example, a blog post, great. If you're annotating an image, you're out of luck. Your post-its would all be outside the image area with no way to point to the specific thing in the image. So we had to exclude that. So now we're getting the ones that were more serious contenders. So we looked at Balsamiq and Glyphy, and both of these could do the job. You could embed an image, you can click on it, you can bring it up into Balsamiq or Glyphy, and you can use the drawing tools there, and you could annotate an image. But we didn't love it for that. And those are both great tools, by the way, and what we were trying to do here isn't exactly what those tools were probably mainly designed for. But those are more robust drawing and diagramming tools, and they were a little bit complicated. One of our key goals here, again, remember, is our clients need to be able to use this. So for them to go into a Balsamiq or Glyphy, it was a little bit much, also a little slow to load, perhaps not slow relative to its full set of capabilities, but for something just to make a quick annotation or drawing, it was a little bit overkill for what we were trying to do. Very close runner-up, and got quite a number of votes for us, and has many advantages, is this tool called Snipe. Anyone use Snipe? Okay, one person. Well, so this is a great tool and did many things well. What Snipe allows you to do is you can embed an image. You have to embed it in a particular way, so you can't just do it the normal way. You have to embed it as a Snipe image. But once, it's not hard though, it's just a different macro. Once you've done that, then anyone can come along, click on the image, and up comes a set of drawing tools, and you can go in there and draw arrows and put circles and type text on the screen. So many things about that were kind of what we were looking for. A couple of problems with it. Well, first of all, and what was great is you could have one image and multiple people could just all pile their comments one after the other onto the same image. So we really liked that. Interface, not that hard to learn, maybe a little cluttered, but we thought we could work with that. And the biggest problem with it was that it is Java based, and Java that runs in the client. And so two big issues that we found with it that kind of led us away from it. First of all, a little kind of slow to load under different circumstances. And the second issue was really for our clients. We had clients that simply couldn't use it. They had corporate computers, were locked down, and in order to use it, it tries to download jar files and other things onto your computer and launch a Java virtual machine and things like that, in the client. And just fundamentally, we had clients with lockdown corporate configuration laptops and such where it just wouldn't work. So we moved away from that for that reason. Also, now it doesn't create, another drawback of it was, you didn't really know who left the comment. When we started playing around with this, you'd kind of have to add your initials or something like that to know who actually left the comment. But we could have probably lived with that. It also doesn't create any JIRA issues. Now remember, that wasn't one of our initial acceptance criteria, so we were okay with that initially. But where we actually wound up was to use Bonfire. And this is not necessarily the main idea behind Bonfire for this type of purpose, but we were able to adapt it and make it work actually pretty well for what we were trying to do. And we found that we had the added benefit, which is that the comments actually wind up creating JIRA issues, which, while not one of our original goals, has turned out to be really helpful. Bonfire is really easy to learn. And I'll tell you, by the way, I should ask, how many people here use Bonfire? Okay, wow, less than I would have thought. So we found it to be tremendous. And I'll tell you, if you ask one of our clients about the Atlassian tools, the first thing they're probably going to talk about is Bonfire, just because they're so excited about it. And that's just because it solves a problem in a very simple way. You know, for those who don't, I mean, is everyone familiar with basically what Bonfire does? Okay. So it's very easy to learn. It launches really fast, which is really important when you're doing site review or when you're reviewing designs and you just want to quickly put ideas down. The client, in this case, already knew how to use it because we were using it for our user acceptance testing. You know, in a perfect world, we'd love it if you could actually overlay the comments onto the same image. Bonfire does not do that. Viewing the image requires you to open a JIRA issue. I'll show you what I mean about that in a second. So those are some things that weren't quite as ideal as we might have liked, but overall it's worked well for us. We also have an issue that we've been alerting those guys about. If you run it under SSL, which we do run our JIRA under SSL, somebody's nodding. Are you having this problem too? Okay, so hopefully this gets addressed. You know, if you're submitting a JIRA issue to Bonfire and you're running under SSL, which I'm guessing most of you are not, then it's slow. It's quite slow. Okay, and also initially it required filling out a lot of fields, but we solved that problem. So let me give you a little more detail on that. First of all, one step back. So this is all in Confluence, and we just to give you a big picture. This isn't Bonfire or anything, but just to show you what we do in Confluence. So there's a space set up for every project in Confluence. And so the client then, if you're a client and if you only have one project with us, then you're probably going here. And in a little bit, we'll show how we use the home screen of that space as an ongoing status report. But within it, you basically have, so in this case, this is the residential customer sign-up project for CNE, which is Constellation Energy. And you can see here that there's sections for background materials. That's like all the stuff the client might have given us, you know, whatever it might be about the project. The final deliverables once they're completed. The for review section, which is the part that the work that we're talking about now would go in. This is the stuff we're saying to the client, we need you to look at this. We have a place where we document all of our meeting minutes, and we'll show you a little trick we use for meeting minutes in a minute. And then lastly, we have the work in progress section, and this section is not visible to the client. So this is the one area when our teams are working in a Confluence space, they know that all these are areas that are for collaboration with the client, but let's say we have a design that's in an early stage where we want to iterate it internally before the client sees it, then that would be put in the work in progress section, and that's not visible to the client. And then what's cool is when you get it to the point where it's ready for the client, if it's a page in Confluence, we just use the move page feature in Confluence, move it into the for review section, and now the client can see it. So, so with that background then, so now let's say we're in that for review section. So we would basically put in as a ping file or a JPEG file the screen that we wanted to have reviewed and put that into Confluence, and then went and I should and go back here for 1 second. And for those of you who use Bonfire, you know that you install a browser add-in, but that's much less likely if you have, as we do, corporate clients, to be a problem relative to their corporate policies for installing than in the case of Snipe, a whole Java app. So all they have to do is push that little flame, and then what happens when they want to comment on something, and that gives them a set of drawing tools. And then they can go in, very quickly draw an arrow, put some text, draw circles, squares. It's very, very basic drawing tools, but that's really all you need, because all you're really trying to do is indicate something. Sometimes we put a line to show this should line up with that, stuff like that, and that tends to be all that it is. And then, and this is the part that's, I think, kind of cool, and I want to give you a sense of how we do this. As those are being added, we automatically add above the actual design the individual JIRA issues that are created. So each issue, each time someone submits, so they annotate something and they submit it, it becomes a JIRA issue. And then those JIRA issues appear above the design. So that fulfills our acceptance criteria that everyone who comes to the design to review it needs to be able to quickly see what has already been said about this design, so they can be not repeating what's already been said and be, thank you, and be commenting on, and be responding to other people's feedback instead of just doing their own in a vacuum. Now, what's kind of cool about this uses the JIRA issues macro, and of course, it's showing only those issues that pertain to this one design, not, for example, all the issues in the project. So how do we do that? Before I get into how I do it, so if you click on one of these, items, what happens is it opens the Jira issue. You then have to click on the screenshot, and then it will show you the screen. And generally on these, there's not a lot of information in the issue. Typically, it's mainly just this. In fact, one of our feature suggestions we would love is if when you type text into a Bonfire screen, it would be wonderful if it also somehow added that text as clear text into the Jira issue. That would be a cool feature, but it doesn't do that now. Not a big deal though. So this is basically then how you can go review them. And so then, so how do we do that? Well, first of all, when they click to open Bonfire and create and supply their annotations, they have to set a template. This is one thing that we have to design. One of the things we would love is if there was some way we could automate this. So we would say it's this page and auto set this template. But anyway, there's one template for a whole project. It's not separate for each screen. But the client or internal person has to set the right template. And what that does is it pulls in certain values. It pulls in the project name, so the issue gets created in the right project. It sets the issue type to design review, so it's very easy for us to separate these, these comments from other issues, tasks, and other development issues on the project. And it also pulls in over here into this, we have a custom field here called design, and what it does is it pulls in the name of the page, basically, in Confluence, and every page of designs would have a unique name, home page, round 2 design or something like that. Whatever that page name is, it pulls it into the design field. And that's done automatically. And the way that's done is when you create a Bonfire template, and remember I was saying they have to set the template. So when we author that template initially, all you have to do is go to your custom field, which is listed on the template, and put in curly brackets document.title. In fact, you can put, I think, pretty much anything from the DOM there, and it'll automatically put it into whatever fields you want. So, and it's based on that then, we are able to use the, it's based on that we're able to populate this because this Jira issues macro uses that value to determine which issues are specifically the comments for this page. And just to quickly show you how we do that, if you don't know how to do this, so when you put in a Jira issues macro, this background area here is showing you the Confluence page in edit mode, and here you can see the Jira issues macro that's been placed there. And if you edit that macro, the main thing you need to fill in here is the URL, and what it's looking for is, in this case, it's this URL, which I realize doesn't look real fun to have to say type, but you don't type it. If you look at it closely, it actually contains the query contained within the URL, but you don't actually need to worry about that. All you have to do to create that URL, and this is a little bit of setup that we have to do for every page, so again, I'm not saying it's a perfect solution, but it's worked pretty well for us, and really once you do it, it only takes a minute to set it up. You go to Jira, you do a query for what you're looking for. In this case, we're looking for things that have the custom field design that contain that Confluence page name. Once you get the query result here, you then have to go under views, you choose XML, and that basically gives you those query results as an XML page. But actually, you can just ignore all this XML. We don't need any of that. The only thing we need is actually the URL. And actually, technically, you don't even need to open this page. You can just right-click on this, and it'll give you the URL for this menu item, and that's actually all you really need to do. So anyway, and once you have that, it creates that. So that's it, and it's worked quite well for us. We meet our criteria. Everyone can annotate the images. Everyone can see all the images, and that's our trick on how we're doing design reviews with Confluence, Bonfire, and Jira. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shaun. And he's going to talk about dashboards.
All right. Hi, everybody. Hope it's warm enough for you. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other things that we do, specifically around client integration and how we get clients into our system. The key item that we use is dashboards. We have so many different roles in our company, in other companies, and then even their vendors, that we've really leveraged dashboards to accomplish that. You can see the story here. It outlines developer, manager, client, or partner. We want to be able to see a high-level view of the key information that pertains to their role, and then quickly understand the information about a project relevant to me at any time. So what you see here is a predefined dashboard for a manager or anyone at a manager level. The left-hand column really just breaks down quick links, projects that they're associated with, items that are assigned to them, and an activity stream. One thing that's very different about the manager dashboard as opposed to some of the others is the inclusion of our tempo gadgets so that they can actually see team breakdowns, hours, planned hours, things like that. And then front and center for them is actually the calendar so they can actually see when versions are going, when issues are due. And this is a good arrangement for them. And then the third column really breaks out two other items that they may need when they're talking, if it's a manager from our company and they want to talk to the client, is, what's the overall, what are the statistics on our issues? Where are we with resolving defects, closing them? And then really we give a list of the open defects. That's a big item for our managers, is to know, what are the defects that are out there. So this is a good dashboard to start with. A lot of times we will configure this from this point for some people, but we do give this to our managers and to our clients' managers to start. Here's the developer look, the developer predefined dashboard. Very similar in the left-hand column. You'll see in the center column we've moved Assign to Me central, just so it's really in their face, because that's really what they need to focus on. If our PMs assign things to them, if our clients assign things to our developers, which often happens. And we've also removed any of the tempo information. They're not really, they don't really need to know what's going on as far as planned hours and what's going on across the team hour-wise. We have included our fisheye gadget so that they can actually see commits, and that's mostly for our peer reviews. We have all of our developers set up that way, so when they see anything go on there, they can see it front and center. Additionally, if there's other repos that they need to be part of, we would add additional gadgets. For this example, we just had one. The right-hand column, favorite filters. Our developers tend to love the filters, so they really work through a lot of them. Some of our developers actually have a whole entire right column of favorite filters because they have so many. And then we just give them the overview from Greenhopper on the project progress. As you can see here, we're actually doing pretty well. Everything done on this one. Watched issues as well. Those are assignments that really our clients use them. They will actually assign watches to my developers. I will assign them, our PMs will assign them. So really that's almost an inbox of sorts that they really keep an eye on there too. And then again, issue calendar is here, but it's not as important for our developers to really have that overview of everything. They're more heads down, but we do include it just in case that's something that they want to look at. And here's the client view, and this is something that when we onboard clients, this is what we give them by default. And this is really for anyone that's not a manager. In the case of Reader's Digest, we have 14 or 15 different editors that are actually looking at issues that they may have for their section of the site, different things from the different apps. Left-hand column, again, is very similar. Central column, we really stuck with the Assign to Me front and center. But what they want to know oftentimes is how many of these things are getting closed, how many things do we have open, so we wanted to move that central to them as well. And then at the bottom of the center well, you'll see that we have the actual showing of items that have been opened, and we break that down weekly, just so they have a sense across their entire project, who's opening what and how many things are getting opened. And again, right-hand column, very similar to the developer. They have the project progress, issues in progress is one item that they want to keep an eye on. What are we actually working on at a glance? Watched issues for them. The client tends to have the most watched issues. They have the most interest in progress of things and are rarely assigned to things. And then down the bottom again, we have the calendar. Now we do have third parties, and these are services, comment systems, analytics, all these third-party companies that come in. We actually bring them into our system as well, along with the client. So not only is the client in there, our people are in there, but now we have these third-party companies that are in there as well. And we give them a very simplified view. We really stick to really the information that they need. Watched issues, assigned to me, and really that's it. We don't really offer them too much information. Of course, they could add to this if they wanted to. But their view is very, very cleaned up. And this is just showing our saved and shared filters. Filters are something that drives most of our gadgets on the dashboard. And across our company, across all of our projects, we tend to share almost all of our filters. And this is really where our developers jump in and they'll grab other people's filters, or our PMs will share filters and things like that. And this is how we generate a lot of the dashboard information. Okay? So going over to Confluence, in that same idea of a dashboard or a single view, while Jira gives us that really analytical look at it, it gives us pie charts and numbers and graphs, this gives us this story behind what's going on. So if somebody had to take this to a meeting or a C-level meeting on a project, they could just take this, they could glance at this, read through this, and this gives them a nice narrative of what's going on in the project. Description and purpose, deliverables, activities. And again, this is something that's been mandated internally for us, that it's used on the homepage of any space for all projects. So if you were to be a PM and you are on multiple projects, you of course would see the same view on everyone. We use team calendars. You'll see a breakdown of the team, the folks that are on the team, and then at the bottom we include some of the JIRA issues that have come from this project. Okay, so I'm going to hand it back to Howard so we can cover meeting notes real quick.
Okay, so this is something similar to what I showed you before. It's just another variation on how we do the same kind of thing, and actually it's interesting in the context of what we saw this morning about kind of the new vision about how to handle this thing. But we were trying to solve the same problem that they were talking about in the main sessions today, where we wanted to document our meeting notes in Confluence real time during client meetings, and all our client meetings get documented. So every week, dozens and dozens of meeting note documents are getting created, and one of the things that come out of them are, of course, action items, and we wanted to make sure all those action items become JIRA issues. So a couple things we do here. First of all, when we have a meeting, we create in the meeting the action items in JIRA, and then we key them in a way similar to the way that we showed you for the design session, so that attached to that Confluence meeting minute page are the JIRA issues that came out of that meeting, and you can come back to that at any time afterwards and see not only what was agreed to during the meeting as action items, but what the actual current status of those items are. One thing I'd highlight is we did create kind of our own tool to create those action items. We certainly didn't want to be shifting context back and forth between JIRA and Confluence constantly during a meeting when you have to take notes. We also weren't able to get quite what we wanted from the insert JIRA issue macro that's part of Confluence. So what we did instead, I mean, what's cool about the Atlassian tools is there's usually like another way to solve the problem. You can build something quick yourself. And in this case, basically what we do is we have our own little form that we use in meeting minutes that allows you to set the project one time, set the reporter one time, and then just type in, set the name of the meeting, which is what keys the action items to wind up on the correct Confluence page, and then just really quickly create the individual tasks during the meeting. And that's proved much more practical than either switching to JIRA or using the insert JIRA issues macro. So Shaun's going to talk about issue and field security.
Okay, so issue and field security was a big item for us. Because we have so many different groups and different companies that are actually in JIRA with us, we wanted to make sure that there were still aspects of JIRA that we could communicate internally and that we could handle certain things like our hours and our billings and things like that. So as a developer manager, I want to be able to record key information onto an issue that should not be accessible to all user types. So JIRA Field Security plugin is what we settled on. There is the JIRA issue security that is part of JIRA, but we really needed to hide specific fields within any issue that we had. So our schema has really looked at internal folks, the client, and then third parties, very similar to how we broke down the dashboards. And the fields that we really wanted to limit, tempo, estimates, and then internal notes, which is where I may have some choice words for a developer that decided not to finish something. And we don't necessarily want to have the client seeing any of that commentary. We use our interactions in the comments to go back and forth with clients or third parties, so that's really left wide open. And then we also want to be able to configure this by project. Okay? So here you see a quick view of one of our issues. You'll see architect notes as a custom field for us. You can see all of our information here from tempo, and you can see our time tracking out here. And then down the bottom, we also have some of these additional tabs that come from Fisheye and Crucible and things like that. Again, we try to limit the amount of confusion and learning curve. We don't want them to wander into some of these other areas if all we need them to really be dealing with is some of the basic information and statuses. Okay, so here you see once we've applied field level security, architect notes no longer show up, time tracking is omitted in both places, and now we simplified the activity tab, less confusion, less wandering into areas that we may not need them. Okay? And that's a really simple setup, especially if you've done other scheme setups in JIRA. It follows the same general principles. You name your schemes, and then over here you have the if this, then that setup for filters and rules. A lot of conditional stuff based on project or based on group or role. And that's how we then limit time tracking on architect notes. We could really limit just about anything on any given issue, but to this point we've only really stuck to time tracking and then our internal communications. Okay? So we'll touch real quick on workflows as well. As a developer, I want to be able to quickly complete an issue step and have all the proper fields updated and have relevant people automatically notified. We jump down. Our acceptance tests are two things. Depending on a user role, they should only be able to move issues. So we didn't want developers to be able to skip testing as a status. And we didn't want to be able to have developers just automatically close all their own issues. Those really don't accomplish much for us. So we wanted to make sure that our issues through workflows are going through all the proper steps. And then finally, we have some custom stuff that we'll look at the end of this section. External actions such as pushing code via our proprietary migration tool should update Jira fields and trigger workflows. And we'll touch on that too. Prior to implementing Jira, we had a lot of shell scripts that we used for our deployments, for Git commits and things like that. Okay. And then also some other things that we had to do database-wise, especially for open source projects. Okay, so here's a basic workflow for us. We have a couple in here that might not be typical for folks, and they've been added mostly for reporting so that we can isolate items, especially items that we don't want to have impact our age. We'll move into a no action. Our transitions really hold true that there's very few people that can move something into no action. We don't want people to be able to hide age of issues by moving things into no action, so that was a consideration. On hold is something where it's typically going back to the client or a third party for more information. So if we have a developer go from in progress to on hold, our transition automatically assigns us to a PM. We're probably going to move this to using a component owner, so that way we can actually align that with the component owner. If that is a client, then we don't have to have the PM touch. It can just be automatically assigned. From in progress, you can see we can move to resolved. Once things move to resolved, a few people are notified for testing to begin, for the PM to be notified, not only to be notified that this issue is resolved, but to notify them that developers are actually ready for another issue to be assigned. You can see that we do have resolved can be moved to closed. This is an administrator only kind of thing, and this happens in cases where there isn't the necessary testing. Let's say we have to export Excel across content or something like that from a CMS. There's no testing involved in that. So we don't necessarily need to leave it in testing. Our QA team can be skipped in that case. And everything really jumps back to reopened. And reopened is something that the client can do, our PMs can do, but our developers can't. We want things to be able to stay in testing. Once they say they're done, we want them tested. You'll see invalid over here. Previously, people, the idea was to just delete things that were invalid or close them, but we really wanted to get at how many issues were we receiving that were invalid. And that's what we use this status for, is to really report on invalid. It's considered resolved in our workflow. But again, then we can report on invalid issues that have been reported. Sure. Okay, I'll jump ahead just so we can look at some of our custom stuff. This is our shell command that we run that actually interfaces with Jira, and then it also interfaces with our Git repos. This is a little more technical. So anytime a developer is actually going to push from their sandbox for us, they would actually run just a simple push command. And it handles all of the Git commands for them, so they don't really need to be well-versed in Git, and they also don't need to be really well-versed in Jira necessarily. In this case, what it's going to do is it actually looks up if this is an enabled branch, so it maps the branch to Jira, and then it's going to ask them if they want to log against the specific issue. Once they do that, they input the key and they input their issue number, and it actually updates a custom field to let everyone know that this issue is now in alpha. And that works mostly for our testers, and it works for our client. Okay. You'll see here the custom field. Initially, all of them default to development. Once the push is complete, it actually will update to alpha. And it'll do that all the way through to our staging environment so that our UAT folks know that it's in staging and they can actually go look at it. Okay? Going one step further, when we actually have to deploy an entire release, sticking with our custom scripts, what we do here is it'll actually ask us, if we want to do the same thing, but this time we're actually going to look up all of the versions that are in the database. And if we want to move these issues, and it even recognizes child versions, excuse me. Once we provide the ID that matches, it'll actually go through Jira, and it'll actually look for all of the issues associated here. It'll report all of the issues that are going to be moved, and that status be updated, and workflows will be kicked off, and then it'll run. And here you can see it'll actually update to beta. And one thing just to note, we do also have it built in to run like a trial run, so we can actually run this, look at all the issues that'll be pushed, make sure that's correct with the PM. If it's not, then we can go back into Jira and find out why things weren't mapped correctly. Okay, and here you can see that we've updated the environment status to beta. Okay, okay, and real quick run through on Bonfire testing for anyone that's not familiar. This is our basic setup for Bonfire. Our clients use this for everything. They use it for testing, they use it for inputting defects, bugs, you name it. We have internal CMS things that they will input this way. And really this has become our help desk more than anything because they like it so much and they're able to install it so easily. We use templates really to keep the same information across all the issues that are reported. In some of the newer versions of Bonfire, we're hoping for some other things to help us really keep that uniform data, force them into a certain template based on a project, things like that. And then session testing, sessions we use for UAT. It's really great because it groups everything together. Previously, we had issues being reported that were just all orphaned issues, and it was really hard, one, to track what those were against story-wise, but two, to dedupe that list of issues. And in this case, we actually train the clients that do the UAT to actually go through the list and look for this issue being reported already. That cuts down on our time to resolve issues dramatically. Okay, and this is just an overview of a basic Bonfire session. Activity log, and actually we've gotten to a point now the clients like this so much that they use the note field heavily and they actually communicate with each other in the test sessions. And we know that it's a successful project or a successful implementation of a tool when our clients start interacting internally without us through our tools. And then you can see the issues raised here on the right. Okay? So that's everything for us. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Lots of really good information there. Unfortunately, we are right at the time for the next session. So what we'll do is we'll do all the Q&A in the decompression chamber. So these two guys will run over there in a few minutes, and if you have any questions for them, please chase them over there.